Hickok here with the Hickok Homestead. So this week's video is going to be a little different. Unfortunately, I fell on Sunday and I sprained my ankle pretty bad. Saw the specialist yesterday. Went to the ER on Sunday. Saw the specialist yesterday, which was Monday, and yeah, it's elevated and I aced and the swelling's gone down, but the bruise is pretty nasty. I'm going to have a really nasty bruise and it's going to take some time to heal. I do now have a boot and crutches, so unfortunately I'm going to be on light duty for a little bit. So because of the situation, I have some time to do this video. Right now, a lot of people are ordering their chicks for the new season. So I'm going to take you through our process of ordering our chicks and what we've learned along the way. You'll get to see our chicks growing up and how everything happened, and let me go through them step by step. First off, let me go through some things that are not going to be in the pictures, and this is step one. First off, you want to choose the breed that will be right for you and your area. If you would like, I do have a video based on one of my previous videos that goes into good breeds for this area that I have found. I personally am partial to barred rock, but I also live in a very harsh climate. So that's something to consider. Choose the right breed for you. Also, you need to think of how many birds you're going to want. Some birds require more space than others, and also how big is your coop, how big is your run, how many nesting boxes do you have. This all requires some planning in advance. And different studies show different things. Truthfully, we went by certain standards and we found that we could actually fit more birds into our coop than what we originally thought. So just think of that when you're planning how many birds you want. We have a 4x6 coop. As you can see, it's a pretty okay size coop. It's nothing huge, but it's a nice size coop. It's also 4 feet tall on one end and 6 feet tall on the other end. It has a sloped roof. So for that, originally we only got 8 birds when we got our rescues in October, the Rhode Island Reds. For our next set, the barred rock, we chose to get 10 birds, and now we have 9. One ended up being a rooster, and I'll get into that in a second. And so truthfully, even those 10 birds, 9 birds, we could probably still fit more birds in there. We could probably get away with about 12 to 14 birds in our coop if we wanted, but it's okay for the time. You want enough space so they're not overcrowded and they're pecking at each other constantly and fighting for territory, and possibly causing diseases. But you also don't want too much space where in the winter time they're not able to huddle together and it's going to cause some issues with the cold. So all things to keep in mind when you're planning on getting your birds. Another thing you want to do is check out your local grain stores and see what their policies are on getting birds. Now, if you're getting a large flock, if you're getting 80 to 100 birds, then I would recommend maybe just going straight to the source and ordering your birds that way. If you're only getting 10 to 20 birds, check out your local granary, because shipping and handling is astronomical when you get down to the nitty-gritty for it. So you want to, go to your local granary and check that out. See what their policies are. Not all of them are the same. Where I work at Radio Grove, which is a grain and hardware store, shocker, they have certain days about twice a month from the end of March until about July, I believe, twice a month that they have scheduled pickup times for the birds. You sign up for what birds you want and put down your name and your number, how many you want, and then you receive them the day after that date, because they are born on that date. Now, that's another thing to keep in mind. You want to actually follow through with this. Obviously, if you cannot, then call in advance and mark your name off. but they are trying to have as little waste as possible when ordering these chicks. So just some ideas to keep in mind. And I know personally when we ordered our chicks, we were really excited. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go and I'm going to take you through some pictures of when we got our chicks, and you get to see them growing up. And I'll explain all the details of how that all worked. Hope you enjoy. The chicks were born on April 19th and arrived at the distributor, Radio Grove, on April 20th. That first 24 hours after hatching, the chicks are at their strongest. The cold and the heat doesn't affect them as much, and they are immune to diseases for those first 24 hours. You still have to be somewhat gentle, though. Chicks are almost always shipped within those first 24 hours. Eli helped me bring in the chicks. Eli was so gentle and was so afraid he was going to hurt them. He actually took a very long time bringing them in. I had to try to rush him to get in because it was a little cold. As you can see, the chicks are in plexiglass box. It is about 4 by 8, or 4 by 3, I'm sorry. A friend loaned it to us, the box, for the chicks. Everyone stopped by to see the chicks, and everyone was very excited and loved it. Charlie and Sky were very curious. So as you can see, we have a heat lamp pointed down at the box. The chicks, after that first 24-hour period, require a heat of at least 95 degrees, if not more, within that first week. Now, it will decrease week by week, so at first it would be 95, then 90, then 85, and then 80, and etc. And you can gauge what your chicks require based on their actions. If they're right underneath the heat lamp, all bundled together, they probably require more heat. If they're all on the outer corners, as far away from the heat as possible, it might be a little too hot for them. All things to keep in mind and keep an eye on your chicks. Aren't they adorable? I could watch them all the time. Now we do have cats, so we put tape around the perimeter to try to dissuade them from jumping up and checking out the chickens. We tried to make it as difficult as possible for them. Another good idea is to put a heat monitor underneath the heat lamp, so that way you get an idea of what the temperature is at all times. Also, we have smaller containers for their food and for their water, which you can find at any grain store. I found these really neat shiny tins, and I filled them with moss and dirt and sticks for later on for the chicks to play around in. That way they get used to burrowing in the dirt and finding those goodies. They absolutely loved it. They spent a lot of time on those, and later they became mirrors, which they also appreciated. Now the kids absolutely loved watching the chickens. They just sit there all the time and play with them and start figuring out who's going to do what and what's going on. Eventually the chicks did outgrow that container, and we had to upgrade. We found an old swimming pool that the neighbor wasn't using, and Mitch constructed this really neat apparatus to go ahead and contain the chickens. We used Velcro on the sides and just screening material around the base. It was just perfect for our chicks. I used shavings down at the bottom, and we then upgraded them to larger containers for their food and their water. Now you will want to have these elevated because they're taller now and they're running around, and they will run around and make a mess. Just so you know. Everyone loved watching the chicks. Charlie was constantly watching them, as was Sky. It was our entertainment in the house. The chicks grew up very quickly. They loved every portion. Here they are under the heat lamp, and as you can see, their feathers are starting to get bigger. Here is their food dishes and their water dish. As you can see, I do have them elevated, and it's for a good cause. Pretty soon they were jumping on everything and pooping and everything. Here's them eating their food. As you can see, their feathers are changing, and they're all starting to get a little different looking. We also had a swing for the chickens, which they absolutely loved and they used quite frequently. I put out a bowl of dirt for them to start playing around and cleaning themselves in. They fought over it. One point we had all 9 of them trying to get into the same bowl. It was quite entertaining. They played on the chicken swing quite frequently and they fought over it as well. At one point we had about 4 chickens on it at one time. We also put in a roost to give them used to being on a roost. Charlie loved watching them, but he never really went after them. And the chickens enjoyed watching him as well. As you can see, the chickens are starting to get really big at this point. They're almost ready to go into their new home outside. The chickens would go and fly and land anywhere they could possibly get onto. They were very close to getting up to the top. Now, I would like to warn you, having chickens in your house is not only messy and dirty, it's also quite noisy. They were loud and they stayed busy. Now, I was cleaning up dust all downstairs for quite a few weeks after the chicks actually left the area. It was very dusty. Soon they were out in their coop, and we kept it closed off for about a week or 2 to get them acclimated to the new space. Soon they were in their run, but we still kept it closed off in certain areas. We didn't want to overwhelm them, and so we gradually increased their space allowance over time. Here's one on the run, or the swing. They loved it, everything. They loved all their toys. We kept an eye on them continually. Now, after about a month of them being inside, we let them out to go in free range. That way they felt comfortable, they knew where their food was and where their home was. They loved burrowing in the dirt and the neighbors loved watching them. Now you might say, that's a rooster. That is correct. There is a 5 to 10% chance that you will get a rooster in the mix. That's why we have 9 instead of 10 now from what we originally started off with. Our chickens love being out and about. They love to go in free range and enjoy spending time with the neighbors. A couple months after the chickens were out and free ranging, they started producing eggs. Now, it could take longer for some breeds. We didn't pressure them. We tried not to. All in all, this process took about 3 months' time. All of us enjoy having the chickens. Sky loves watching them, Charlie loves watching them, and so do the neighbors. We hope this information has been helpful. And again, if you liked it, please hit the like and share button and subscribe. Thank you. Bye.